Hello, this is Jungle Jim. Jungle Jim at your service. As most of you know by now, I am by trade a theologian. But what most of you do not know, I assume, is that I happen to come from a long line of theologians. In fact, there are 367 of us in line at the graduation for my master's in divinity at Charlie's Chocolate Factory. Oh, and that doesn't even count the lines of the other places and institutes from which I graduated. Let's see, there's Oxford Middle School and the Greetings University, MEU, etc., etc. So you might say I come from several long lines of theologians, as it were. MEU? Oh, that's just the highest of higher learning institutes. Yes, Mount Everest University. Yes, I do believe I remember the Mount Everest University fight song. Oh, it's one of the best. Let's see. How does it go? Oh, yes, I remember. Me, you, me, you. I'm sorry, I must clarify here. I'm not warming up. That's actually part of the song. You see, when the composer, Francis Off-Key, was writing the Mount Everest University fight song, he was warming up his voice, and then all of a sudden he realized, wait a minute, MEU spells me you, and so he decided to keep that as part of the fight song. So let's see. Yes, yes, I remember now. Excuse me. Me you. It's the university on the side of the world's greatest mountain, where every drink's a frosty, and the air is filled with all but oxygen. We march and climb up the stairs. Better hope your class is on the first floor. We throw snowballs into the air. Oops! The avalanches are never a bore. It's the college of frostbite and love. So fight for MEU and your breath. So fight for MEU, not me, you. So fight for MEU. Now, you see, I wasn't actually out of breath there, but when you sing at that altitude, that's about what the song sounded like every time we did it toward the end. And so I wanted to give you somewhat of a realistic rendition. But you see, as wonderful as the fight song was, it also had a sadness to it, because, for one, it almost caused a huge split in the Department of Theology. Oh, yes, some of our finest minds, our finest professors were at war with one another, so to speak, over whether we could sing Fight for MEU or Turn the Other Cheek for MEU. But after much deliberation and debate, it was decided that, yes, even followers of Christ do engage in spiritual warfare. And so they decided, yes, we can indeed sing Fight for MEU. No, the really sad thing about the song was that we hardly ever had any sporting events at which we could sing it. For as I mentioned before, when your university is on the side of the world's tallest mountain, excuse me, sorry, it's the old bubble in the old throat there trick. When your university is on the side of the world's greatest mountain, it's hard to find flat places on which to build fields and courts and such. And so we'd build them anyway, slanted as they were. And just about every sport we tried, it was a complete disaster. Now, I say almost because I don't really consider the university's attempt at having a swim team to be a disaster. Because at least there, after we built the swimming pool and tried to put water into it, the buildings that were flooded thereafter helped us start the Mount Everest University Aquarium. And so at least that turned out okay. Well, yes, there was our first attempt at putting fish into our tanks / flooded buildings. That didn't go so well because we neglected to remember that the water still had chlorine in it. But even then, for the next month or two, the Mount Everest University sushi bar made a killing. And so I don't consider that to be the greatest of tragedies. And I must say that Mount Everest University Aquarium is the second most popular tourist attraction in that area of the world, second only to, what else is over there? Let's see. It'll come to me in just a second here, I'm sure. It's second only to, yes, Mount Everest. So, all in all, it's not a complete disaster. And I must give credit to the university. I'm quite proud of them because they really gave it the old college try, literally. For after our failed attempt at filling the swimming pool with water, they called together some of the finest minds in the university's science department. And they explained the situation, told them that we didn't want to disband the swim team, and so they asked us, was there anything we could do? And to their credit, they came up with an idea that I thought was rather brilliant. Snow. We had plenty of it. If you kept it nice and loose, the swimmers could move through it with somewhat of their normal swimming motions, or so we theorized. It would stay in the pool despite the slant, and so we thought, well, yes, this is brilliant. So I remember the very first Mount Everest University swim meet. It was the Mount Everest University Gaspers versus the Indians. It was the very first event. The swimmers got up. I was there. I remember it like it was 7 months ago. They got up. You heard the man say, "Take your mark." Pew! What? With the pew being the pistol, the what being the pigeon that was in the rafters. You see, it was our first event, and no one had yet informed us or told us you don't actually put bullets in the pistol. And so, well, unfortunately, it led to the untimely demise of a certain pigeon trying to be at peace and rest in the rafters. But let's see. Oh, yes. So the swimmers dove, and at this point, for visualization's sake, you know how radio broadcasters do, and they say, oh, the team's going left and right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have to tell you that we had a debate on which way we should face the swimmers. We were worried that if we faced them uphill, they wouldn't quite be able to dive into the pool. And so we faced them downhill. And of course there we quickly learned that they were indeed able to dive over it. It wasn't a pretty sight. All I can say is thank God for the extra pool filler we had at the lower half of the building. So that didn't end very well. So after that failed attempt, they called together the scientists really quickly, and so they came together and they did some quick experiments. They did some analyzation and calculations, et cetera, and they said, oh yes, indeed, we can face the swimmers uphill, and they will indeed be able to get into the pool. And so that's what we did for the second event, much to the delight of the swimmers, apparently, judging by the look of relief on their faces. So, once again, they came up to the pool. The man said, Take your mark. Pew, whack. And of course, this time, the swimmers dove into the pool, not so much because of the sound of the pistol, it's just they didn't want a dying pigeon to land on the top of their head. So they dove in. 5 seconds went by. 10 seconds went by. And we began to talk amongst ourselves, saying, oh yes, this must be the swimming event where they stay underwater. And swim underwater to the other end of the pool and back, and whoever does that fastest without breaking the surface or coming up for air or whatever wins. But that must be it. Until someone kindly pointed out to us that there is no such swimming event. And so, as a hinge, a tinge, an inge, there's no such thing as an inge. As some sort of worry began to creep across our minds, all of a sudden, a hand came out from underneath the snow. A foot, a leg, shoulder. All of a sudden, heads began popping out from underneath the snow. Swimmers moving along in a never-before-seen swimming motion that was quickly dubbed the death stroke. And it was at that moment that our scientists, the light bulb went on above their heads, so to speak, and they were smiling, laughing. Oh, silly us, we forgot. Oh, people don't actually float in snow. It's a minor oversight, if you will. And I'm happy to say that of the 10 swimmers who participated in that event, all survived. Only 4 came away with frostbite. Only 3 had severe attacks of claustrophobia. 2, I am very proud to say, have just finished their last sessions with the Mount Everest University psychiatrists who have diligently helped them overcome their PTSD, post-traumatic snow disorder. And one found it to be a very positive experience, for he said it helped him to overcome his greatest fear of being buried alive. For if you ask him about it, he'll tell you, been there, done that. So, alas, in the end, we really couldn't continue with having a swim team, at least not at Mount Everest University. Sometimes we get people together, they travel other places, but alas, not at the university. Well, let's see. I've gotten sidetracked again. Why am I here? Oh, yes. I am here because I want to tell you stories from the Bible. In particular, today I'd like to continue stories from the Old Testament, that section of the Bible that contains writings before the coming of Jesus Christ, Son of God. And in my last recording, I told you about Cain and Abel, 2 of the sons of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve. But before I can get to the next major story of the Bible, there are a couple of principles you need to understand in order for the story to make sense, in order for you to understand what God did and why God did it. The first is this. If there is something you love, you truly love it, you're passionate about it, you're emotional about it, you can't imagine life without it, then you cannot stand that which is its opposite, that which is contrary to it, that which stands opposed to it. You see this in sports all the time. For example, if you love the Dallas Cowboys, you can't stand the Cleveland Indians. If you love the Los Angeles Angels, you can't stand the Duke Blue Devils. If you love the New York Yankees, you can't stand the Ole Miss Rebels. If you love the Ole Miss Rebels, you can't stand the Alabama Crimson Tide. Oh, wait a minute. No one can stand the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's see, well, except the Alabama folk. Well, it's not a good example. But you understand what I mean. If you love something passionately, deeply, then you can't stand its opposite. And so God loves love. God is love. And if you love love, you're going to hate hate. Now, with that understanding in mind, the other thing we must do is ask ourselves this very important question. And that is, why did God create man in the first place? Was he bored? Well, I don't think so. Did he feel like he had too much hair on his head and needed good excuses to pull some of it out? No, I can't say that is what it was. Was he trying to strike the perfect balance between intelligence and stupidity? No, I don't believe that's what it was. You see, God had a dream, if you will, a vision of a race. No, not the swimming meet that we had at Mount Everest. No, not that one. Not the 100-meter dash. No, not that kind of race. The human race. God had a vision, a dream of a people who would choose to love. A people who would choose mercy, kindness, compassion, goodness, self-control. A people of faith. A people whose greatest joy would be to do good for others. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick and imprisoned, use their turn signal when changing lanes, and other great works of goodness and kindness. And that's not Jungle Jim opinion. Let me read to you from the Bible. This is Titus, a New Testament letter, Titus chapter 2. And I want to read to you beginning at verse 11. See, this is very exciting. We wonder, what is our calling? What is our purpose? And our calling is, no, it's not our cell phones. No. That's you calling someone else. So no, your calling is, no, oh, never mind. I'm going down the wrong road here. The calling that God has given mankind, it's right here in the Bible. Titus chapter 2, beginning at verse 11. Remember, verses are little subdivisions of chapters. It says, I'm reading from the New King James Version. There are many English translations. This, fortunately for everyone who speaks English, happens to be one of them. Verse 11, for the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us that, denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present age, looking for the blessed hope and glorious appearing of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify for himself his own special people, zealous for good works. You see, God's vision, God's desire, God's dream, what he's working for. His grace teaches us we deny ungodliness. and worldly lust. Ungodliness means, that which is not like God. We were made in God's image. We were made to be like, God made us to be like Him, not to be the opposite of Him. And so we deny evil and violence and hatred and putting one's gum that one has chewed underneath desks and such. And instead, we embrace that which is good and right. And Jesus, having forgiven us, assuming you give your life to Jesus, another story for another day, He forgives us, and then He molds us and makes us like the master potter. No, not Harry Potter, not that master potter. That's a fictional potter. Jesus was real. Harry was, he wasn't very hairy. How do you get the name Harry if you're not Harry? Never mind. Anyway, Jesus is transforming His followers into His special people, zealous, excited for doing that which is good. Now, if you have this in mind, that if you love love, you're going to hate hate, and God's vision for mankind, you'll understand the next story of the Bible. For you see, Adam and Eve had sons and daughters, and their sons and daughters happened also to have sons and daughters, who happened also to have sons and daughters, whose daughters and sons happened to have daughters and sons. I don't know why it turned out backwards after so many generations, but it kept going on and on. Mankind began to multiply and divide, subtract, add, and do algebra and such. The latter of which may explain what we read in Genesis 6, how violence filled the earth. The hearts of mankind became corrupt. The Bible says that the thoughts and intentions of mankind were only evil all the time. Now, that's not what God was aiming for. It was the exact opposite. And in what is, to me, the saddest statement in all the Bible, it says that God was grieved in His heart, even to the point that He regretted, I'm paraphrasing here, even to the point that He regretted making mankind. Now, can you imagine being God, all-powerful? You created this wonderful work of art. You looked at it and you said, "Oh, it's very good." And your dream and your vision of having a people full of love has now become so marred and turned into such a nightmare that it is like a work of art beyond repair. To the point you have to say, I've got to start all over. But God did not have to start completely over. For God, whose eyes roam to and fro throughout the earth, who searches the hearts of mankind, looked everywhere on the earth and found one man who still trusted Him, one man who was a man of love, a preacher of righteousness, a man of faith, and that man's name was Yoda. No, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no. That's not right, Yoda. Oh, please forgive me. I was using the farce there. That's Jungle Jim. Let me see. Ah, yes. That man's name was No Duh. Ah, yes. Much better. No, wait a minute. That's not much better. That man's name was Noah. I'm so sorry here. Jungle Jim's mind is going. It's on the tip of my tongue, I tell you. That man's name was Noah. Yes, Noah. And God appeared to Noah, explained what he was going to do, explained that the hearts of mankind were totally corrupt, the earth was full of violence. And so he was going to wipe all mankind, all creatures from the face of the earth, except for Noah, his wife. Of course, we all know Noah's wife, a very famous lady, Joan of Arc. His 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their 3 wives. Not only was God going to save Noah and his family because of Noah's love for God, his faith, God was going to save each of the species of the animals of the earth. 2 of every kind, male and female, would be on this giant boat that God was going to have Noah build in order to save him from the flood that he would bring upon the earth to destroy it. Now understand, first of all, that this boat had a special name. It was called the Ark. And the reason it was called the Ark is because originally it was called the bark. But then when one of Noah's sons pointed out that they were actually removing the bark from the wood before they put it onto the boat or used it to make the boat, they decided, well, for taking the bark off, we'll just symbolically take the B off the name, and so that's why they call it the Ark. Well, it's not only 2 of every kind, male and female. There were exceptions to this. For example, of the birds, Noah could have 7, a male and a female. Of the clean animals, Noah could have 7. Meaning if the animals were willing to take a bath, then he could have more than just the 2. I mean, it was going to be stinky enough as it was on that boat. I mean, if the animals weren't willing to conduct themselves with proper hygiene, then 2 was the max. And understand, we are only talking about those animals that lived on land. The fish, those that lived in the sea, they weren't worried about a worldwide flood. In fact, you had entire schools of fish planning field trips to see places like the Grand Canyon be formed. And so, they weren't worried about it, and they didn't need to be on the boat. So, God gave Noah very specific instructions as to the size of the ark, some of the interior design. It had to be there were 3 levels and rooms and windows and details such as that. And there was to be food, of course, on the ark, and it was to be made of gopher wood. Now, this has been a great debate among theologians, wondering what was this gopher wood? Was it cypress? Was it cedar? People, let Jungle Jim enlighten you for a moment, okay? It was not, we're overthinking it here. It was called gopher wood simply because Noah had to go for the wood. I tell you, we just, we overthink these things, and my apologies on behalf of theologians everywhere. And so God told Noah exactly how to build the ark. And Noah did everything just as he was commanded. Now, once the ark was complete, God had Noah and his family go into it. 2 of every kind of living creature went on to it, and for certain species, 7, male and female, 7 pairs, I would suppose, I'm not exactly sure. But they went on to the boat. God shut the door. And 7 days later, the rain began to fall. And it wasn't just that rain was falling. Water came up from underneath the earth. The fountains of the deep were broken, and water was coming in all directions. For 40 days and 40 nights, it rained upon the earth until the mountains were covered, till all mankind that were not in the ark perished from the earth. You see, mankind had gotten to a point where all things were hopeless as far as righteousness was concerned. There was no way that the children of that day would grow up to know God. And so God had to start all over, with the exception of Noah and his family. When it was all said and done, Noah and his family had to stay on the ark for about a year. For it took a very long time for the waters to recede from the earth. God sent a wind over the earth, and the water began to dry up. But it took a long time for the land to become dry again and livable again. So God finally called Noah and his family out of the ark. And after that, 2 major changes were made. One was this, that in addition to the plants of the field, God gave meat to mankind to eat. He gave permission for mankind to eat meat, which may explain why the world before the flood was so violent, more than the algebra, that they were all vegetarians. Well, okay, I'm sorry, that's offensive to vegetarians today. But, Noah was a vegetarian, so there are good ones. Anyway, the other thing was God set a rainbow in the sky as a sign to all mankind who are not colorblind that God would never again destroy the earth by water. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope you now know your calling, your purpose, what God has envisioned for you. May you love love and hate hate. This has been Jungle Jim at your service.